If someone asked you to describe the best electric car for a family, what would you say?
Well, you'd definitely say that it has to have a good range. It has to be cheap, and it would be great if it had loads of space. So with all of that in mind, is the MG5, a fully electric estate car with a 250-mile range and a £25,000 price tag, the perfect electric car for a family? In this review, we're going to run through the good bits, the bad bits, we're going to tell you how it compares to its rivals, and also what to look out for if you do want to buy one. But before all that, subscribe to the channel if you want lots more new car reviews, and don't forget to go to whatcar.com for a great deal on your next car. Let's talk about the price first, because with a lot of MGs, that is the main headline grabbing info. And the MG5 is no different. So you can have it with 2 different batteries and 2 different trim levels. All versions are eligible for the UK government plug-in grant of £2,500. And with the grant included, this car is priced from £25,000 up to £29,000, which undercuts a phenomenal amount of electric cars. So quite simply, this is one of the cheapest EVs out there. So what's the catch? How have they made the MG5 this cheap? Well, you might be thinking that surely they've just given it a horrifically cheap feeling interior to cut some corners there, but actually that doesn't appear to be the case, because there are enough soft touch materials and chrome highlights and piano black trim to lift the overall feeling of perceived quality in the MG5. So it's actually better overall than it is in the Nissan Leaf. But sure, these indicator stalks in particular and some of the plastics elsewhere do feel rather cheap. So if you look at other electric cars that cost a similar amount of money, like the Mazda MX-30, the Honda E and the Mini Electric, they have significantly nicer interiors. But then they're smaller cars and they can't travel as far on a full charge either, which is something we'll talk more about a bit later on. Now, every MG5 gets an 8-inch touchscreen infotainment system, but it's mounted quite low on the dashboard here. So that means that when you're driving, you have got to take your eyes quite far away from the road to see what's going on. And also on a bright sunny day like this, the screen is quite difficult to see because it's really glary. And you have got some helpful shortcut buttons on the bottom of the screen here, but it would be a bit more useful if they were slightly bigger. Plus, it is good that you've got this handy home button on the middle of the dial here and a couple of physical shortcut buttons too, but it is rather limited in what you can easily control without having to just stare at this touchscreen for ages. And it's also pretty painfully slow, occasionally jumping between menus, loading up certain functions. But the good news is you get Apple CarPlay and Android Auto as standard, so you aren't just stuck with the software that MG gives you. But if there is one major criticism of the MG5's interior, then it's actually the driver's seat, because basically everyone from What Car who's been in this car, the first thing that everyone wants to do is just put the seat lower, but you can't. This is as low as it goes. So you're kind of stuck with this really weirdly elevated driving position that seems to have been sorted out completely independent of everything else inside here. Now, from a practicality point of view, it's not quite so bad. It does take a bit of getting used to, but I'm just under 6 foot. I don't feel cramped up front. I've still got quite a bit of clearance above my head. But if you are especially tall, then that's when that available headroom could become a bit of a problem for you. But the good news is that these seats are actually pretty comfy, and there's a lot of adjustment in this steering wheel as well. So even though you've got an oddly high driver's seat, you've got a good chance that you'll be able to set the wheel up to a position that does feel good in relation to the driver's seat position. In terms of storage, that's pretty good up front in the MG5. You've got decent sized door bins. You've also got another cubby under the armrest here, as well as 2 cup holders, a handy spot for the key right next to that. But then at the top of the center console here, under this tray, you have got 2 USB ports and a 12-volt socket, but this is incredibly shallow, so there isn't actually room for anything else. It would be a little bit more useful if you could keep your phone in there. But what you can do is use one of the door pockets on the side here, which are just about big enough for a new big smartphone. Space in the back of the MG5 is pretty good. I'm just under 6 foot. The driver's seat's in my driving position, and you can see I've got an all right amount of legroom. I can't really put my feet that comfortably under the seat in front when it's in its lowest driving position, but headroom is okay. I've got a little bit of clearance there, but if I was especially tall, then it would feel a little cramped back here. But if you're 6 foot, then you should be able to get in the back of this okay. What's also good is that you've got a completely flat floor here. So if you do end up in the middle seat, then you don't have an awkward lump getting in the way down there. And you've also got 2 USB ports in the back, which is especially handy. But an MG ZS EV, which is a fully electric SUV in MG's lineup, is actually a bit more accommodating for rear seat passengers. And if you want to see a full review of that car, then just click on the link at the top of the screen up there. And also, if you compare the MG5 with more traditional fuel-powered estate cars like the Ford Focus estate and the Skoda Octavia estate, then they are a bit more spacious back here as well. Those other estate car rivals also have bigger boots than the MG5 by quite a bit, and even the MG ZS has more boot capacity than what you get with this car. But still, at 464 litres, it's a useful size. You can certainly get all your family luggage in there, no problem at all. And what's handy is that every MG5 gets a height adjustable boot floor as standard. So in its highest position, as it is here, you do still have a bit of a loading lip at the front, but you have some underfloor storage as well, which is actually big enough to just about squeeze the parcel shelf in as well. And if you want to make the boot even bigger, then you can fold down the rear seats. They split fold 60/40. When the MG5 first went on sale, it was only available with a 52.5 kilowatt-hour battery pack, and that gave it a claimed electric range of 214 miles. But now we've got this, a long-range version of the car, which gets a bigger battery pack, 61.1 kilowatt-hours, and a bigger range. So the WLTP claimed electric range of this car is 250 miles, which is very impressive. It's further than the entry-level version of the Nissan Leaf, and much further than cars like the Mazda MX-30 and the Peugeot E208 and even the Renault Zoe. In fact, if you want to go much further than this car, then you'd have to spend quite a bit more money on something like a Hyundai Kona Electric or a VW ID3. And to make the most of the range that is available in this car, you've got different drive modes, normal and eco. You've also got different levels of regenerative braking, but even in the strongest setting, which is level 3, it doesn't allow for one pedal driving. So when you lift off the accelerator, the car does slow down, but not to the extent where it will bring the car to a complete stop. But something that is a little bit annoying is I think a lot of EV drivers, myself included, would get in this car, put it in its maximum regen setting, which is level 3, and then just forget about it. But when you turn the car off and come back to it later, it goes down to level 2 every time, which is quite annoying. I put it in level 3 for a reason. Now, if you're wondering what this third toggle switch does down here, the one that isn't labelled, then when you press it, it just flashes up showing how much range you've got left until empty, which is handy, even though you do also have a constantly visible dial as well. As for the brake pedal itself, it's actually pretty good in the MG5 by electric car standards. So it's not too grabby, it's not too numb, it's consistently weighted and actually quite easy to bring this car to a smooth stop. When you do run out of juice, all MG5s can rapid charge from a CCS charger. And from a 50 kilowatt charger, you'll be able to go from 0 to 80% in around 50 minutes. If you find a 100 kilowatt charger, that time drops down to 40 minutes. From a 7 kilowatt home wall box charger, you'll get a 0 to 100% charge in 8.5 hours. And from a 3-pin plug, you'll get a full charge in 18 hours. No matter which MG5 you go for, you get a 154 brake horsepower electric motor, which helps get the car from 0 to 60 miles per hour in a pretty respectable 7.3 seconds. Now, that isn't absolutely rapid by modern electric car standards, but for something that is basically probably going to be a family runaround, that's definitely quick enough, isn't it? And like many electric cars, the battery pack supplies power to an electric motor which is mounted on the front axle. And to drive it, all you've got to do is use this rotary gear selector, put it in drive, and away you go. It's as simple as that. And it doesn't take very long when you're on the road to realise that this is a car geared more towards comfort rather than speed. And actually, the best way to illustrate that are these seats, which are actually quite comfortable, but they are lacking quite a lot of shoulder support. So if you go around a corner quickly, then you do kind of feel like you're sliding out of the seat. But when you're at a steady cruise on a dual carriageway or the motorway, if you're just going around town, then this is a pretty calming, relaxing electric car to drive. The steering's fine, it's accurate enough, certainly as accurate as it needs to be. Lumps and bumps in the road are dealt with in a pretty impressive manner really, and this is more comfortable than quite a lot of other electric cars which all cost more money. So this isn't the most amazing car in the world to drive. It's not the most comfortable car either, but when you factor in the price, then there is definitely a lot to like about the MG5, and it's pretty remarkable really. If you do want to buy one, then this is how we would spec it. Of the two batteries available, we'd go for the bigger long-range version because you do obviously get a longer range, but you also have some important safety equipment like automatic emergency braking, which the smaller battery versions of the MG5 miss out on, which isn't great. There are two trim levels to choose from, and even entry-level Excite trim gets 16-inch alloys, an 8-inch touchscreen infotainment system, rear parking sensors, and adaptive cruise control. If you do want to go for range-topping exclusive trim, then you can do so by spending an extra £2,500, but we don't really see the need to do that because that sounds like quite a lot of extra cash to get a leather style upholstery, heated front seats, heated door mirrors, silver roof rails, and sat-nav.
If you're wondering which individual options you should be considering, apart from metallic paint, there aren't any, which keeps things nice and simple.
And by the way, whichever MG5 you do decide to go for, you get a 7-year or 80,000 mile warranty as standard. So is the MG5 the best electric car in the world? Well, no. Obviously, there's quite a lot of other EVs that are nicer inside and better to drive, but when you factor in just how cheap the MG5 is compared to all those other rivals, then that's when you can really start to see the appeal of this car. And that's where it could tick quite a lot of boxes for quite a lot of potential buyers. It's comfortable, it's reasonably quiet inside, there's a decent amount of space, and it's relatively quick as well. There's certainly a lot to like about this car. And for even more information on it, go to whatcar.com, where you can read our extended review on this car and every other new car on sale. And on top of all of that, you can also get a great deal on your next new car at whatcar.com. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel before you go, and do tell us in the comments below what you think of the MG5.